911, what is your emergency?
I'm at a friend's house. He's out of town, and I came here to check on his wife, and she's dead on the floor. And she didn't answer. I pounded, and he gave me the key code to get into the garage door. I opened the garage door, and the door leading to it was open. One of the dogs ran out. I don't know if he left or not. And I walked in. I just opened up the door, or walked in the door, and she's dead on the floor. And there's a big bash in the back of her head.
A really good day. I appreciate you guys giving it the coverage you can and bringing this community to some closure. Hopefully, this community has a sense of peace, knowing that this person is behind bars. I think a lot of people have been waiting for this day, and here is the day.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Although a jury found me guilty, I am innocent of all charges, as I have maintained since this heinous crime took place.
A jury of 12 have found you guilty as charged, so you are guilty.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Paradise After Dark is a bi-weekly podcast covering true crime,
Unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
urban legends, and the dark side of the Sunshine State. But first, if you'd like to support the show, please subscribe to us at patreon.com/Paradise After Dark podcast. And a real quick thank you to those who do support the show.
On Patreon, you'll have access to weekly bonus episodes, our monthly spin-off show, Vacation Edition, discounts on our merchandise, and more.
You can also check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com, for our latest episodes, links to the social media that Lauren spoke about, our Etsy store, and a special donate button if you'd like to just help out the show.
If you have a question, a Florida case suggestion, or you'd just like to chat, please email us at paradiseafterdarkpodcast@gmail.com.
So, Lauren.
So, this episode, we are concluding the Dr. Teresa Sievers saga with part 4. So, let's just dive right into it. Again, if you haven't listened to episodes 1 through 3, you might want to go do that first before listening.
Yeah, start with 1.
Start with 1. And Ken, why don't you give us a quick recap?
Okay, yeah, let's see what happened previously. Now, Teresa Sievers, a well-known and loved holistic doctor, was murdered in her home in Bonita Springs, Florida on June 28, 2015. Now, it quickly became to light that Dr. Sievers' husband, Mark, had orchestrated her murder. He hired his friend, Curtis Wainwright, and Curtis Wainwright hired Jimmy Rogers to drive down from Missouri and kill Teresa Sievers. Now, all 3 men were eventually arrested for the murder. Now, Curtis Wainwright has pled guilty to second-degree murder and has been sentenced to 25 years in prison. And Jimmy Rogers went to trial, and with the testimony of Curtis Wright, along with all the evidence against him, was convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison.
So now, for the conclusion of this story, we're going to talk about Mark Sievers' trial. Now, before the trial started, the state announced that they would be seeking the death penalty. This is important because when faced with the death penalty in the state of Florida, you must have a death penalty qualified attorney representing you. At this point, Mark Sievers was being represented by Antonio Fega and Michael Mummert of the Fega Law Group. And just a little side note, I actually worked for Tony Fega for about 5 years. And when I saw that he was representing Mark Sievers, my very first thought was, oh my God, I'm so glad I'm not working there anymore.
Yeah, that would be a great case.
But, Tony Fega, and it shocked the shit out of me because Tony was not a hardcore defense attorney. He was the best boss. I loved him. And, he just never struck, the whole time I worked there, he never represented a murderer. He did DUIs and small things. But when I saw that, I was really shocked. After the state attorney's office announced that prosecutors would be seeking the death penalty against Sievers, Michael Mummert and Antonio Fega filed a motion in late December asking Lee Circuit Judge Bruce Kyle to appoint Gregory Masur, a death-qualified criminal trial attorney, as Sievers' co-counsel. Now, Mummert and Fega argued in their December 29th motion that although Sievers was being represented by private lawyers, his case, quote, is an exceptional circumstance where court-appointed counsel is necessary and constitutionally required.
No, that they're trying to make sure I don't understand what they're trying to do there.
Okay, so he's being represented by Antonio Fega and Michael Mummert, and neither of these attorneys are death penalty qualified attorneys. In the state of Florida, if you're facing the death penalty, you must have a death penalty qualified attorney. So they're asking the court to appoint Gregory Masur, who is a death qualified criminal trial attorney. And when the court appoints an attorney to a defendant, that means the court's going to pay for it.
Yes.
That means the taxpayers are going to pay for it. So they're asking basically the court to appoint this specific lawyer. But Judge Kyle, who in November had declared Sievers indigent, which means indigent means he's poor. He can't afford a lawyer or anything. So he issued an order that if Sievers wished to be considered for an appointed co-counsel, he would have to be willing to accept appointed counsel as provided by statute, meaning that the court would choose and provide him a death penalty qualified attorney. He couldn't just pick whoever he wanted and expect the state to pay for it.
Yeah, exactly, because they wanted a specific person.
Right. So Judge Kyle outlined the process. First, a public defender is appointed. If the public defender has a conflict, then a regional counsel is appointed. If a regional counsel has a conflict, then a private counsel from a registry of attorneys who have entered into the contract with the Judicial Administrative Commission, a taxpayer-funded organization that provides administrative services on behalf of judicial-related entities, is appointed. Well, Gregory Masur eventually ended up being assigned to the case anyway.
So they spent all that time to get that done, and the judge kind of fought it, and then ultimately ended up just exactly what they wanted?
Yes.
Okay.
So now he's being represented by Gregory Masur, Antonio Fega, and Michael Mummert. But on a side note, Antonio Fega tragically passed away from brain cancer on October 3rd, 2018, never making it to defend Mark Sievers at trial.
Yeah, that's a sad story because he really was a good guy.
I know. It was very sad.
Now, Mark's trial began on November 20th of 2019, so we're talking just a few months ago.
Right.
And the jury was made up of 3 men and 9 women. The first day of opening statement started with a look back at the evidence by the state attorney, Cynthia Ross. She began 2 months before the murder, April 29th of 2015, with a text sent by Mark to a friend who lived 1,100 miles away at 10:18 a.m. The text read, "Hopefully we can talk privately tomorrow, not about you or Angie, but it's personal." We discussed this text message in part 1 of our case, I believe.
No, it was in part 2.
Was it? Okay. I stand corrected.
Now again, this was a case where the 21st century technology became vital. Every time an app updates, every time we make a phone call, every time a text message or Snapchat is sent, that communication pings off of a cell tower. I think if you're into true crime and you follow any kind of cases or anything like that, then you know this.
Exactly. There's trigger things, DNA, pings. We know these things.
Yes. Then the ping is recorded and forwarded to where it can be sent in the blink of an eye. As we talked about in part 3 of this episode, Lee County Sheriff analyst Myra Simmons was able to trace and track the cell phone pings from Mark Sievers and Curtis Wainwright's personal cell phones and their burner cell phones. Every time the burner phone pinged off a tower, Mark's personal cell would ping off the same tower. Another text message from Sievers to Wright stated, "Mailing out today, call me, it's very simple." Just 13 minutes later, he sent a second text that said, "Since neither of us are likely to carry both with us, whenever you want to use the other, just text me other, and then I can call." So earlier when we were talking about the text messages and the cryptic text messages that say other, that's what they were talking about.
Other burner, other phone.
Right. So basically one would text the other and say other, and then they would know to start using the burner phones.
Yes.
To communicate about whatever they were communicating about. Obviously, they were using the burner phones to communicate about the planning of the murder. A few other pieces of the puzzle: a shredded life insurance policy in Mark's office on Teresa's death totaling close to $5 million, and physical evidence like the blue coveralls and the broken cell phone.
Well, then there was the Garmin GPS found at Wright's home. Lee County Sheriff's Office was able to retrieve the deleted and overwritten data that showed a trip to Jarvis Road the weekend of the murder, as well as a Walmart and various gas stations. And they were seen, remember, on the Walmart footage.
And the gas station footage.
Exactly. And it shows Jimmy Ray Rogers and Curtis Wayne Wright walking into the Walmart on 6 Mile Cypress Road the morning of the murder. Just a few hours after the murder, the two were seen entering a gas station just a few hours north. So it was a hit and run. They did the murder and took off.
Dr. Mark Petratus, the friend who found Teresa's body, testified that he went to the home after the call from Mark saying Teresa hadn't shown up for work. He also testified that he told Mark something terrible had happened and that Teresa was hurt. He said during that phone call, Mark didn't ask how his wife was hurt or where she was being taken. Mark only asked if there had been a robbery. So if somebody called you up and said your wife has been hurt, what was your first?
Well, first, obviously, you're going to panic. You're going to say, is she okay? That's my first question. And no, she's not okay. Whether anything was taken is that there's no.
So Mark only asked if there had been a robbery.
Yeah, I wouldn't be concerned if it was a robbery. I'd be concerned, how is she? Where's she at? What's going on here? I'm so lost. Here's the part that bothers me absolutely the most about this poor doctor. This was his friend. This were family friends. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't like he was Mark's friend. He was Teresa's friend too. I mean, they were family friends. They'd done stuff together. And Mark maliciously uses this guy to go and find the body, knowing full well that he is sort of an upstanding citizen, that he has the credentials to where people will believe him, that he wouldn't be implemented in any way, shape, or form in this.
Right, because if we go all the way back to the beginning, one of Teresa's nurses was going to go and asked Mark if she should go to the house to check on Teresa, and Mark specifically told her no. Then he called Dr. Mark Petratus.
He wanted
had him go find the body.
So you're going to send this person. So basically, and if you're that doctor and you're going to send me, I mean, you can just, once he realized everything and everything came together for him and realized that he was part of this plot. And so he walked in and he found this friend of his murdered, and he saw because things you can't unsee, viciously murdered on the floor. And I mean, obviously, whether you're a doctor or not, and doctors and nurses will tell you, once it becomes family or friends, your mindset on how you feel about work changes. I find that to be very disgusting, that you're going to bring this guy in here to find his friend dead on the floor, beaten and scared to death, terrified that he could have walked in and he could have been killed too. And he has to walk outside, call 911.
Well, if you think about it, this is a man who orchestrated the murder of his wife.
I get that.
The mother of his children.
Mm-hmm.
So asking a family friend to find the body, I don't think is beyond the realm of possibility for this guy.
I understand that. I get that. I get what you say that now, but it's just one of those things where the whole thing bothered me in this case was it's like this poor guy. I mean, you listen to that 911 call that you could just hear the sorrow, the compassion, the fear in his voice. He was thoroughly messed up of this.
Yeah.
So anyway, now, and not to thread light on that, but I'll move along here. Now, Wright's testimony about the conversations he had with Sievers. Now, his best friend was telling him that he was desperate and was pulling out his heartstrings, telling him he would lose his girls and his girls would be in danger. So putting in that, she's going to leave me and take my kids. Now, Wright stated, he said the only option was for her, Teresa, to die. He asked me to kill her, to take care of it, he said. Sievers made it clear that there was a lot of insurance money involved, and he said he would pay Wright $100,000 or more to murder Teresa. Now, Sievers gave Wright many ideas of where and how to kill his wife. One idea was communicated through a prepaid phone, was mugging at her office. So he was going to have her mugged while she was at work. Now, when we went to the office, it was obvious that it was too exposed, Wright said. I had already ruled it out by that point. And it was then he determined that Dr. Teresa Sievers' home would be the ideal site for the murder. Now, but Wright encountered another problematic scenario. What if there was someone with the victim when the murder happened? They would have to be collateral damage, said Mark Sievers, according to testimony from Wright. You would have to kill them too. So here he is being heartless again. It doesn't matter who's there. It also came out during Sievers' trial that while she was being bludgeoned to death, Teresa thought Wright was actually her husband.
Because they look so much alike.
Exactly. Because you said they were twinsies. Could you imagine that? Because if she thought it was her husband and she died before she realized that, I mean, obviously I understand that you're dead at this point and it doesn't matter, but that's that last thought you have. You spent your entire life going to school, becoming a doctor, being successful, doing all this stuff, helping people. And the last thing that goes through your brain amongst all the education you've had in your lifetime is, my husband is beating me to death. It's disgusting.
So in all, the state called 37 witnesses to the stand, and let's take a look at just a few of them. Linda Otterstatter, FBI physical scientist, analyst in the forensics unit, testified at the trial that fibers collected from Dr. Teresa Sievers' dress and body and in the rental car were similar in characteristics and properties as the fibers from the blue coveralls found on the side of the road in Missouri. Additionally, the fibers matched those collected from the Sievers' kitchen floor. Sherry Fentress, biologist and forensic examiner with the FBI's DNA casework unit, examined hair collected during the investigation. She compared a hair found on the jumpsuit found on the side of the road in Missouri to a DNA swab from Rogers. She said she could not exclude Rogers as being the source of that hair. Fentress said that means that the hair could belong to Rogers or one of his maternal relatives. Now, Taylor Shoemaker, again, Jimmy Rogers' ex-girlfriend, testified that Rogers confessed to her that he killed Teresa with a hammer. Shoemaker also testified that Mark Sievers was, quote, kind of a pervert.
Bethany Mitchell, the colleague of Teresa's and a friend of the couple, testified that she called Mark after his friend Wright was arrested for the murder. She said Mark sounded panicked and was worried he would be arrested next, saying police were trying to frame him and Wright. Now, Mitchell maintained that Mark was apparently more upset with law enforcement than he was with the person accused of killing his wife. Yeah, exactly. So, Danielle Berardelli, childhood friend of Teresa, testified that when she learned of Teresa's murder, she immediately flew to Florida. She said when Mark came to see her at her hotel, it appeared as though he was crying, though when she looked at him, his eyes weren't red or watering. So, fake crying? She testified that Mark discussed who would take care of his daughters if something were to happen to him, which she was confused by. She said immediately after, he started talking about the life insurance. So you go from talking about who's going to take care of my kids to life insurance.
Kimberly Torres, Sievers' next-door neighbor of 6 years, testified that she'd overheard an argument between Teresa and Mark about a month and a half before the murder. She said Teresa was going to leave Mark, and Mark responded with, if that's what you want to do, fine, but we'll see about that. She admitted on the stand that she doesn't like Mark very much. She said she was relieved when he was arrested for Teresa's murder. Now, Dr. Thomas Coyne, medical examiner, described what Teresa looked like when she was brought in for her autopsy. He said there were impacts of trauma on her head and he could feel fractures on her skull. Coyne said there were probably 17 impacts to Teresa's head and called her injuries severe. Coyne then stepped down to show jurors pictures from the autopsy. Mark chose not to look at them. When asked by the defense if he could definitively say that one or more hammers was used in the murder, Coyne said he could not. This was a major point in Rogers' trial and one of the reasons why the jury refused to convict him of first-degree murder. Remember we talked about why he was convicted of second degree. Well, they couldn't definitively say that more than one hammer was used. So, again, they couldn't place Jimmy Rogers, the hammer, in Jimmy Rogers' hand.
Understand. Okay.
So, Dr. Thomas Coyne was the last witness called by the state, and they rested their case.
Okay, so now it's the defense's turn, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the defense then made a motion for a judgment of acquittal, saying there's insufficient evidence to show Mark conspired in the murder of his wife and that the only direct evidence came from Wright, a convicted felon. Judge Bruce Kyle denied the motion. Yeah.
Duh.
What do you mean there's not enough evidence? I think they got plenty, and they knew it, but that's what you start, right? So the defense called back several of the witnesses that the state had already questioned. Their aim was to poke holes in their stories, and they didn't do a very good job. They called Myra Simmons back to the stand. Remember, she analyzed the cell phone data in the case?
Sievers' attorney asked her about Angela Wright's, Curtis Wayne Wright's wife's personal and burner phones. A map shows that her burner phone pings only showed in Missouri, not Florida.
And the defense questioned early about Angela also owning a prepaid phone. Now, there was some back and forth questioning about Angela's involvement in the plot. There was also some talk about Angela possibly tampering with the witnesses. Now, Angela Wright was talking to a potential witness in Missouri, then detectives told her to stop. And so, of course, she stopped. And Lieutenant David Lebed of the Lee County Sheriff's Office testified earlier that their investigation concluded Angela never went to Florida and was not involved in the homicide. So they did their due diligence. It seems in this case, they went through every bit of evidence. They scrutinized every piece of evidence in this case.
The defense called Curtis Wayne Wright back to the stand, but only questioned him about some text messages that were exchanged between him and Mark. One of the texts from Wright to Mark Sievers read, "You are not sleeping with us." Us being Wright and his soon-to-be new wife, Angela. Now remember Mark and there was talk that they had kind of a swingers lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
So the defense showed the text Wright sent to Mark the day after Teresa was found murdered. "I just talked to Scott and he told me what happened. I am so sorry." The only new witness that the defense called to the stand was attorney Monica Lyons of Lyons & Lyons, PA in Bonita Springs. I know you're looking at me funny because I actually worked for Lyons & Lyons as well. That was my very first law job. I was a receptionist at Lyons & Lyons for like 8 months. So it's so weird how I feel like I know these people, which makes it weird for me. But anyway, in 2009, which happened to be the year that I was working there, Lyons created an irrevocable trust agreement for Dr. Teresa Sievers with Mark Sievers listed as trustee. She testified that when Mark and Teresa first came to see her, she didn't believe either had sufficient life insurance policies. The defense argued that this is the reason Teresa had so much life insurance.
And during the defense's closing arguments, attorney Michael Mummert again tried to pick apart the state's case. He gave answers to some of the questions the state posed. How did Wright know that Sievers' alarm code? Well, he stayed there before. How did he know Teresa was out of town? Well, he was already coming down to Florida for work. He then went through some of the witnesses, trying to point out their inconsistencies, specifically shining a light again on Angie Wright. Yeah, he reminded the jury that she also had a burner phone and at one point tampered with witnesses. Detectives excluded Angela Wright as a witness because she wasn't in Florida at the time of the murder, just like Mr. Sievers, Mummert told the jury. He told the jury that reasonable doubt can be found in the evidence, lack of evidence, and the conflicting evidence. He then said that there was one question that was never answered. Why? The defense's closing arguments lasted an hour and a half, and the video of it can be found online with a simple Google search. In the interest of saving time, you want to just kind of move along?
Yeah, we're not going to play that.
Yeah, let's not do that.
So on December 4th, 2019, Mark Sievers was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder after jurors deliberated for about 4 hours.
Do you want to play the clip for that?
Yep.
Does either side need any time to talk to their sides or their parties, because these things are tough, and I'm not going to have any outbursts.
We talked on the elevator ride up.
Defense?
We're fine, Your Honor.
Okay. I mean, if you can't handle it, you should wait in the hallway and let someone tell you after we have the verdict. Bring them out.
Yes, sir.
Have you reached your unanimous verdict? Will you please pass the verdict form to the bailiff? Thank you. We'll let the clerk publish the verdict.
In the Circuit Court of the 20th Judicial Circuit, in and for Lee County, Florida, criminal action. State of Florida versus Mark D. Sievers, case number 15 CF 673B. Verdict. We, the jury, find as follows as to the defendant in this case. Count 1, first-degree murder. The defendant is guilty of first-degree murder. Conspiracy. The defendant is guilty of conspiracy. So say we all, December 4th, 2019, by the foreperson.
Would either side like the jury polled?
In the video, Teresa's family can be seen crying and hugging one another. Mark Sievers teared up as well. Mark Sievers made a brief statement before the judge handed down his final sentence, and we have a clip of that as well.
Although a jury found me guilty, I am innocent of all charges, as I have maintained since this heinous crime took place. I love my wife, Teresa, and our 2 daughters with all my heart. Our girls have tragically lost their mommy, and now they are about to lose their daddy as well. Therefore, I respectfully ask the court for life, as not to compound their loss and suffering. I am grateful, however, that the court can only determine my fate on earth, while my soul is in God's hands, and God knows the truth. Although I cannot feel remorse for something I had absolutely nothing to do with, I am deeply saddened and forever heartbroken, to say the very least, that Teresa was taken from us. Teresa is my soulmate. I will miss her and cherish our memories until we are reunited in heaven. Until then, I will fight this wrongful conviction until I am proven innocent and set free to rejoin my family.
That gives me the fucking creeps.
Yeah. Manipulate much.
Right. Like, I don't even really know how to describe how that statement makes me feel, besides just like icky.
It sounded coached.
It sounded completely rehearsed.
Exactly.
And what's the word? I don't even know what the word for it is.
Douchey?
I can't feel remorse for something I had nothing to do with.
Well, your wife's dead.
I don't even know what to say about it.
You know, that just, when you listen to that, it really brings
it home.
Exactly. And it almost reinforces all the testimony and all the stuff we talked about all his friends and everyone they knew and relatives and witnesses, saying that he really expressed no remorse. He really expressed no
sadness
true feeling.
over her death.
And this is one of those
fake crying, and
exactly.
You can almost tell that in his in his voice, it was very forced.
Yeah.
Sadness. Like,
exactly.
You know what I mean? So
in all of his sadness that he was not really expressing, on December 10th of 2019, the jury recommended the death penalty.
And on January 3rd of 2020, Judge Bruce Kyle went along with the jury's recommendation and sentenced Mark Sievers to death. Now I'm going to play that clip as well.
A jury of 12 have found you guilty as charged, so you are guilty. You do get an automatic appeal to the Florida Supreme Court. I'll inform you of that at this point in time as well. And I judge people's actions. I don't judge people's souls. That's for somebody else to do. Sir, I'm going to go ahead and adjudicate you guilty on each count. On the first count, first-degree murder. This is the order of the court that you be sentenced to death, sir. And the second count, conspiracy, I'm going to sentence you to 30 years in prison consecutive to count 1. Again, you have an automatic appeal to the state Supreme Court. There's $413 in court cost, $100 cost of prosecution, the standard cost, as well as the total cost of prosecution, which has been agreed to, of $9,287.48. I'll order and reserve on any cost outstanding to the JAC at this point that have been expended on your behalf. If you think this is an illegal sentence, of course, again, you have an automatic right to appeal. You'll get credit for all the time you've served on this case, concurrent with as to all counts. This total credit is 1,408 days towards this time. And again, I judge people's actions, not their souls. And if I'm wrong, hopefully God will have mercy on both of us. Good luck to you, sir. We'll take your prints and your DNA as well.
So it kind of seems like Judge Kyle wasn't buying into his little sob story there.
No, I think once the judge allowed the process, he allowed the court to do what the court does, and once the jury found him guilty, that's when the judge stepped in, finally basically threw the book at him, slammed the gavel down like, you're done here.
So it's kind of, I don't want to say funny, but ironic that the two that actually committed the murders,
yes,
were sentenced to second degree. Well, Curtis Wainwright pled guilty to second degree murder. Jimmy Rogers was convicted of second degree murder and sentenced to life. Mark Sievers, who was not even in the state, was convicted of first degree murder and sentenced to death.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what he gets for, like you said earlier, putting all this together.
Right.
He basically made it happen. I mean, he come up, he schemed it, figured it all out, and told them, hey, this is what we want done. This is what to do it. And, I mean, I think he would be more guilty because if he just would have decided to go through a divorce, think about that. You'd still be free. You'd still be alive. You would still be doing stuff outside beyond that. You might not have as much money and you might have someone who hates you, but you'd still be seeing your kids. You would still
You wouldn't be sitting on death row.
Exactly. You would still have some life, if you will. And now, because you just didn't want to get a divorce, because there was some actions about divorce or talk about it. It was just, the whole thing is just
Senseless.
bullshit to me.
Yeah.
So, well, on Friday, January 17th of 2020, not too long ago, folks, Mark Sievers was given a first-class trip to Rayford from Lee County Jail. Now, Rayford is a state prison in Florida where all the Florida death row inmates are housed, and I guess he's going to stay there until the sentence is carried out.
Yep. And that's the end of this story.
So, do they still use old Sparky?
No. Lethal injection is the standard method of execution in Florida since the year 2000. But the electric chair, aka Old Sparky, can be used by request of the inmate.
I would go for Old Sparky.
I don't think I'd want to be electrocuted. I'd rather just go to sleep.
But, you know, if you are electrocuted and you survive...
I think there is some kind of law that if you survive,
you can walk.
You can walk away.
And they can't be tried again. So, with that being said, there's a shot.
Yeah.
It's 1 in a million.
I guess you're right.
But what you're saying is, I have a chance. So, was there anything else we want to discuss about this case? I mean, This was a long case. It was a lot of work. Lauren did a fantastic job.
I gotta be honest. I'm glad that it's over.
Yeah, this was a hard one.
Like I said, we have been watching this since before we even started this podcast, and I honestly was waiting for the conclusion till all the trials were over and all the sentences were handed down to tell this story. Now, this just on January 3rd, which is literally, we are recording this on February 3rd. So literally 1 month ago, he was sentenced to death. So that's when I really began diving into this. And I went down a rabbit hole. It sucked me in. And I'm sort of relieved that we're done with it. I'm glad that we're telling the story because I hope that this is a cautionary tale to anybody who decides they want to hire someone to murder their wife, that it's not worth it. And
divorce is expensive. but it's much, much cheaper.
Right. So that's all I have to say about that. And I'm ready to wrap this one up.
And I hope everyone enjoyed this case in the aspect of there was justice.
Yes.
And when I say that, that's what I mean when you say enjoy this case. Justice. This case became justice. This is not a missing persons case. It's not an unsolved case. I think they got it right. I think they did everything. I think the evidence that was presented points in every direction it should.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 100% satisfied with the layout of how everyone was convicted and charged. I think there should have been 3 cases of first-degree murder. But again, one's life in prison without being paroled, 25 years for a man of his age. I think it's gonna be
okay.
It's gonna satisfy the case. It's not gonna bring Teresa back. She was a wonderful person based on everything everyone said, and it's a real sad case. So, again, like Lauren said, just get a divorce. Don't murder your wife or your husband. But again, like Lauren always says, it was time. It was the husband.
Yep, it was the husband.
So, I guess, is that everything for tonight, Lauren?
Yep.
Okay.
Again, if you'd like to support the show, please subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Paradise After Dark podcast.
And just so everyone knows, it's not like it's like $150. This is not a DirecTV subscription or Comcast. I mean, for a few bucks a month, you can
$5. $5 a month.
$5 a month for as little as $5 a month. You can get all this extra stuff. So anyway, you can also, if you, once you go and sign up on Patreon, then you can head on over with your promo code you get when you sign up to our Etsy store for some awesome Paradise After Dark gear.
Make sure to follow us on social media at Paradise After Dark Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and at Paradise Dark 239 on Twitter. You can also email us at paradiseafterdarkpodcast@gmail.com.
And please check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com, for our latest episodes, links to the social medias, and our Etsy store. And again, that'll get you right to Patreon. There's a link to the sidebar.
Please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening on, and rate and review. This really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
Yes, that does allow us to come up quicker and faster, I think, in the searches.
Yep.
And sometimes it'll say, hey, since you listen to this, maybe you like this. That really does help us out, and we'd appreciate it. So, again, everyone, thank you so much for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark, 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 dark.